experience, it's always much easier and much better to live the Christian life when you've got a supporting cast of godly friends helping you along the way. I also understand this. Friendship is very important to all of us because we're relational beings, aren't we? We love friendships. And whether you've got your group of one or two best friends, or you're like me where you've got like a million, everybody's your best friend, you know what I mean? Everybody's kind of like views friendship differently. We all have friends, and we all value our friendships. And so I've entitled tonight's message this: Friends don't let friends be bad friends. Friends don't let friends be bad friends. There's the old, it was really popular when I was younger, and then I think it's still around for the most part. We all know the acronym though, BFF, right? What does BFF stand for? Say it for me. Wow, well done. That was great. Best friends forever, right? Like everybody wants a BFF. Everybody wants their best bud forever. Their best bud who's going to back them up no matter what happens in life. Their best bud who's always going to stand by them. We all look for that sort of friendship. And we've already seen in our 1 Samuel study that David has started to develop a friendship like that with a young man named Jonathan. So we're in 1 Samuel 20. Saul is still king. David's the anointed heir to the throne due to Saul's disobedience. Saul is absolutely furious, though, as we read from 1 Samuel chapter 18. And the real issue started when David had his praises sung by the women in the streets after he killed Goliath. And then David started getting all this national attention. And David started having military success. And just things kept happening, all this positive stuff. And now Saul's getting ridiculously jealous through all of this. And so by chapter 20, Saul has thrown several spears at David trying to take his life. He sent him on a suicide mission. He's ordered his servants to kill David 3 different times. We'll talk about this next week. And if you're keeping count, by this point in 1 Samuel 20, Saul has tried to kill David 6 different times. Like, I feel like after the first time, you'd kind of be like, okay, I don't think this guy likes me very much. But 6 different times, Saul tries to take David's life. And the unique reality here is that David's best friend is Saul's son, Jonathan. This really makes the dynamic very awkward, okay? I know as a parent, maybe you have that one kid, one of your kids' friends, right, that's kind of annoying. You all know who I'm talking about. You know, it's like, oh, they want to come over to hang out again? Oh, I don't think I can handle that. You know what I mean? But like, this was worse than that. I mean, Saul literally was trying to actively kill David, but Jonathan is best friends with David. It's not like they're having a sleepover anytime soon. You know what I mean? They're not hanging out at Dad's house, right? And so we're going to pick up our reading in 1 Samuel chapter 20, reading in verse number 1. So David's well aware of Saul's intentions. So we see here in 1 Samuel 20, verse 1, and David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, his best friend, Saul's son, "What have I done? What is mine iniquity? And what is my sin before thy father that he seeketh my life?" And he said unto him, "God forbid that thou shalt not die." This is Jonathan speaking. "Behold, my father will do nothing, either great or small, but that he shall show it me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so." And David sware moreover and said, "Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death." Then said Jonathan unto David, "Whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee." We're going to continue our reading as we kind of march through the passage here in a moment. But a lot's happened in these first 4 verses. And David and Jonathan are about to experience the ultimate friendship test. It's funny how friendships evolve over time, right? I remember when I was a little kid, there was this boy who gave me a friendship necklace. It was like a puzzle piece. I faintly remember this. And I was like 9 years old, maybe 10. He gave me this, and he's like, "You're my best friend." And we were very dear friends. But the problem was, he was moving and I was moving, never to see each other again. I honestly don't even remember his last name. His name was Kevin. His first name was Kevin. I don't remember his last name. But he gives me this necklace. He's like, "As I'm leaving, I want you to know you're my best friend." I was like, "You're my best friend too, Kevin." And we parted ways with our necklaces, our separate pieces, and never saw each other again, right? And I'm sure you probably have friendships like that where you were best buds for like a year, and then things changed. They moved, you moved, something happened, and you don't really see them anymore, right? Your best friends in middle school probably aren't your best friends in high school. And then your high school best friends maybe were people you never ever talked to again once you became an adult, right? And I remember when I was in college, I made some very dear friends at college. But some of my best friends at college, I hardly talk to now, and some of the guys I couldn't stand in college have become my best friends. It's crazy. One of those is Brother Corey Estep, who came and did our missions conference. He spoke one of the nights at our missions conference. We never talked at Bible college. I didn't like Corey. He was a little too fancy for me. I was like, whatever, this guy. But we become very dear friends since then. I would say one of my best friends, truly an encourager to me. Every friendship changes over time. And a lot of times friendships will fall apart or grow stronger when those friendships face adversity, challenges, difficulties along the way. And David and Jonathan were about to face one of the greatest difficulties or trials you could ever experience in a friendship. As David's explaining this situation to Jonathan, Jonathan can't believe it. He's probably recounting the times that he's like, your father's thrown a spear at my head multiple times when I was playing a harp for him. And your dad even sent some of his servants after me to try to kill me. And you know, Jonathan, because you were there when he ordered it. In fact, we'll read next week in chapter 19, Jonathan actually talked his dad down and said, Dad, don't be crazy. And this was an all too real example of an individual whose relationship got tested to the extreme, because here's Jonathan, best friends with David. He wants to protect his friend. He wants to believe his friend. But now his friend's making this really crazy accusation. Your dad's trying to kill me. That's his dad, his blood. And not only this, think about the weird dynamic, not only that Saul hates David and Jonathan's in this mix, but Jonathan's supposed to be the heir to the throne. Jonathan, by this point, knows David is God's chosen heir. That means Jonathan can't be the next king. Think about that for a second. Jonathan was supposed to inherit all these riches, all this greatness. So that throws another wrench into the whole mess. Anything that could go wrong or be tested in their friendship was happening in this moment. And unfortunately, it was all kind of the catalyst of it all, I should say, was Saul. A lot of times in our friendships and family dynamics, there are toxic people. Toxic people is kind of a more recent term that we use for individuals who are manipulative, who are controlling, who are hurtful, who interject themselves unnecessarily in relationships. And we need to understand that toxic people are real, and our relationships will be affected by toxic people. So most of the time when you're put in a situation where you're exposed or where you're expected to choose sides, that's what a toxic person will do. You know, hey, it's either me or him. And this is happening for Jonathan. Jonathan's got to go home to his dad, and his dad's like, I don't like David. It's either me or him. And David's over here running for his life saying, Jonathan, I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I don't want to die. Will you help me? Jonathan's in this really messed up situation where he's got his dear friend who's just trying to follow God and do right, and his dad, who unfortunately, even though he was his father, is evil, is manipulative, is a liar, is trying to be a murderer. And so Jonathan's stuck in this really unhealthy situation. And for Jonathan and David, this toxic influence of Saul, it stemmed from jealousy and insecurity, as we talked about last time, a couple weeks ago. Instead of focusing on himself and making his relationship with God better, he just focused on beating David, his threat to the throne. This put Jonathan, like I said, in an incredibly difficult spot. So we can very easily relate, I think, to this scenario. And I'm not saying that every person in this room has a Saul, right? But I'm sure that many of us in this room, we've been exposed to people who are manipulative, controlling, hurtful, and they're just trying to meddle and hurt our relationships with other people. And again, I'm not trying to dredge up bad former memories. I'm just saying we need to be aware of what these relationship dynamics can look like, and that even in God's word, he shows us, hey, these people exist, and these people are evil, and they're just out to hurt you because of their selfishness and insecurity. But I do want to take, before we get into the rest of the message and the main application, I want to take just a brief rabbit trail to just notice how Jonathan handled all of this. On both accounts, he didn't throw David under the bus. He didn't say, well, forget you, David. My wealth and future is at stake, so forget you. He didn't do that. He still cared about David and took care of David. But he also didn't go home and totally disrespect his father. Was Saul in the right? No. Was Saul acting like a godly man? Absolutely not. But Jonathan didn't go home and curse out his father. He didn't go home and try to fight. He didn't go home and cause a bunch of issues. He acted with great godliness and respect towards his father in spite of how his own father was behaving. So I think the first thing we need to acknowledge is this, that David and Jonathan were both men of very high integrity. David, this is very important, David and Jonathan were both men of very high integrity. And the only way their friendship could blossom as it did and work as it did through this adversity was by them both having high integrity. So I'd say from that, the first thing that we need to look for in a friend is a person of integrity. A person who is of right character. A person that isn't always sneaking around behind their parents' back. A person that isn't known for being disrespectful. A person who isn't known for trying to bend the rules, but somebody who is obedient and respectful to authority. Somebody who is submitted to God and His word and obedience to Him. Somebody who has a good testimony. See, I've heard this definition of integrity. Integrity is it's who you are when nobody's looking. You know, that's your character. And if you have good integrity, you are a good, wholesome, upright person even when nobody's watching you. But I know that struggle and that temptation when you assume nobody's watching, nobody's going to find out, nobody's going to know. What are you going to do? That's going to be a real revelation of your true character. So if we're looking for a good, strong, healthy friendship, we need to start by looking for a person with great integrity. But there are 5 more qualities of a healthy and strong friendship that I want to look at. The first quality is revealed for us in verse 4. Look at verse 4 again. It says, "Then said Jonathan unto David, whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee." Jonathan just got some pretty bad news. Hey, your dad's a murderer. He's trying to kill me. Your dad's really evil. He's not the man we thought he was. I think for a while, everybody saw Saul's bad behavior and they just blamed it on probably stress, blamed it on anger management issues, and it just excused it. And it's a shame how often we excuse bad behavior and we make all these excuses. Our world is a world of excuses nowadays. We make all sorts of excuses for bad behavior. And I think even back then they were doing that for Saul. They're like, Saul's just having a bad day. Even the times that the javelins were cast at David's head, David and the others probably was like, he's just stressed. We just came from battle. He's got a lot on his mind, a lot on his plate. He didn't mean it. And it's a lot of times until you get out of a situation like that you look back and realize how bad it really was. And I know for some in this room, maybe you grew up in an abusive situation and you probably made excuses for your abuser. You made excuses for that person that hurt you, that was manipulative, and that was mean, that toxic individual in your life. And it seems like that Jonathan and David were doing the exact same thing, but David had finally woken up and he said, this isn't coincidence anymore. No excuse can mask what's really happening here. Saul's trying to kill me, Jonathan. Jonathan still can't believe it, but even though Jonathan is torn and conflicted, and Jonathan's trying to get down to the source of the truth here, he doesn't abandon his friend. And one of the greatest qualities that's first exhibited here is the quality of loyalty. The quality of loyalty. I think loyalty is an all too quickly forsaken attribute in individuals' lives today. We're not loyal. So many people are willing to just use and lose friends to advance themselves. Even when I was candidating for churches, and even one of the questions I got here at Victory and so many others is, do you plan on sticking around for a while? Why is that a question? Why does that have to be a question for a pastor? I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to stay here as long as God has me here. And if God has me here forever, then so be it. I'd love that. That'd be wonderful, right? God's in control of that. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people who use churches or different job opportunities as what we call stepping stones. They don't really care about the relationship. They're just here to advance their own cause. Same thing happens with friendships, right? Where you make a friend with an individual, but you don't really care about the friendship. You don't really care about the individual so much. You're just using that friend to get to someone else, right? I remember seeing this when I was a teenager, okay? Believe it or not, I was a catch in high school, okay? The options weren't great. We were all homeschooled and desperate. And so I remember my sisters coming to me angry. I don't like those girls. I don't like those girls in the youth group. Why? Why don't you like those girls? They're nice girls. No, they're not. They're just using us to get to you. I was like, no, they're not. They're like, yes. They're only friends with me because there was like a 3 or 4 year difference. So, it was kind of obvious. I was oblivious, right? No, they're just using us. And they were so mad. They were mad at me and they were mad at the girls. And I finally had to wake up and realize, oh no, they really are using you. That's pretty messed up, isn't it? Cross them off the list, And people do that, don't they? They'll use friendships to advance their cause and to get what they want. There's no loyalty anymore. But we see a great and godly example of loyalty where even though Jonathan didn't fully understand what was going on, even though Jonathan was kind of in a crossroads where one of you has to be lying, he still remained loyal to the people he loved most until he discovered the truth. And we've got to be careful not to give up on people too quick. You hear me? We got to be careful not to give up on people too quick until we discover the truth. Because even when somebody gets bad news, or excuse me, I should say, whenever you hear bad news about someone because someone did something wrong, maybe, we need to be loyal to them and come alongside them. Because what does the Bible says? The Bible says, bear ye one another's burdens. The Bible says, ye who are righteous, lift up the fallen, right? When somebody stumbles, we don't need to just burn that bridge and abandon them. We need to stick with them because they need you in their life now more than ever. Jonathan didn't cut bait as soon as he heard what was going on between his dad or his best friend David. Instead, look at verse 5, what he does. It says, and David said to Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. So this was kind of a tradition. Every time there's a new moon, he would be back at the home of Saul, and they would all have dinner together. He says, your dad knows that, so let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even. And if thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me that he might run to Bethlehem his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. And if he say thus, it is well, thy servant shall have peace, but if he be very wroth, if he be angry, right, then be sure that evil is determined by him. Therefore shalt thou deal kindly with thy servant, for thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee. Notwithstanding, if there be in me iniquity, slay me thyself. For why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? So in this loyal friendship they had, they come up with a plan. And David says to Jonathan, go home. I'm not going to be there. I'm going to hide in the field and see how your dad responds when I'm not there at the dinner table. If he's fine with it, if he says, so be it, then we'll know that he doesn't really have bad intentions toward me. But if when he finds out I'm not in the house and he gets angry about it, we'll know what his intentions really are. And because Jonathan was loyal to David, Jonathan was going to follow through with the plan. Loyalty looks past the differences and the opinions and the problems in others. Because in reality, we all have difference. In reality, we all have problems. Jonathan wasn't getting overwhelmed by the complexity of their friendship. He was getting overwhelmed by all the problems that were arising. He was able to look past that in order to be there for his friend. Here's one way I like to think about it. Never be the one to burn the bridge. I heard this from my pastor growing up, Pastor Mark Monty. He taught me this. Never be the one to burn the bridge. Other people might burn the bridge with you, but a godly attribute is that you not be the one who's constantly burning bridges with other people, and then what you're doing ultimately is isolating yourself and proving yourself to be unloyal and unfaithful to others. Here's a second quality. I don't want to get too hung up here. In verse 9, look at me in verse 9. It says, and Jonathan said, here's his response, far be it from thee, for if I knew certainly that evil were determined by my father to come upon thee, then would not I tell it thee. A good friend is trustworthy. A good friend is trustworthy. Jonathan says right here, he's like, David, you know me. If my dad really wanted to hurt you or much less kill you, and I knew about it, you know I would tell you. You know I have your back. You know I'd be looking out for you. A good friend is trustworthy. David depended on Jonathan to give him information when his life literally depended on it. He didn't go to anyone else. He didn't go to his brothers. Remember, he had a bunch of brothers. He didn't go to his brothers. He went to Jonathan. And he said, Jonathan, I need your help. And I know that you're really like right in the middle of all this, but you're the one I trust the most. Jonathan was so trustworthy that David knew he could literally trust him with his life, which is why they devised this plan. Look at verse 10. Then said David to Jonathan, who shall tell me? Because here's the other problem. Jonathan could go back, but what next? How is David going to know what the results are of the conversation? What if Jonathan can't leave the house? Who's he going to send? What's the friend going to say? What's going to happen? So here's their plan. David said to Jonathan, who shall tell me? Or what if thy father answer thee roughly? And Jonathan said unto David, come and let us go out into the field. And they went out both of them into the field. And Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow, any time, or the third day, and behold, if there be good toward David, and I then sin not unto thee, and show it thee, the Lord do so, and much more to Jonathan. But if it please my Father to do thee evil, then I will show it thee and send thee away that thou mayest go in peace. So again, trustworthy. He says, hey, if my dad has evil intentions, I'm going to let you go. You can trust me to be loyal, and the Lord be with thee as he hath been with my father. And thou shalt not only while yet I live show me the kindness of the Lord, that I die not, but also thou shalt cut off thy kindness from my house forever. Know not when the Lord hath cut off the enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, let the Lord even require it at the hand of David's enemy. They even made a covenant to solidify their trust. I mean, this was like a pact, a bond that could not be broken. Where he says, you can trust me so much, and we're going to make this covenant that if I break this covenant, then my children will be cursed. That's literally what he's saying in the passage. He's like, if I break this covenant, then your blood will be on my children. And then they'll be cursed because you couldn't trust me, because I didn't come through for you. So they developed this idea, this pact, to solidify their trust in one another. But one thing I do want to say about loyalty and trust is this, to clarify, especially for the young people. Loyalty and trust doesn't mean betrayal, lies, or cover-ups are okay on behalf of your friend. Trustworthiness really goes both ways. And this is especially for the kids and teenagers in this room, because I was a youth pastor for 10 years, and I saw it firsthand. Adults do this too, though. Where you're my friend, I will literally do anything for you, including lie for you. We're still Christians first. We got to remember that. We're still Christians first. And as the children of God, our loyalty and our trustworthiness must be to God first. And so if your friend's in a situation where they're about to do something destructive or hurtful, they're about to do something that's going to hurt themselves or others, they're about to do something evil, you need to take that to an authority. You don't cover up for your friend so that they can do something wicked or wrong. So trustworthiness needs to be a part of your friendship, but not to their hurt, right? All right? The third quality, real quickly, a good friend loves. A good friend loves. Look at verse 17. And Jonathan, after making this covenant, caused David to swear again because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. A similar exchange took place in 1 Samuel 18. We read it there in 1 Samuel 18, 1 through 3 a couple weeks ago, which marked the beginning of Jonathan and David's friendship. There it says in those first couple of verses of chapter 18, and it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Verse 3, and Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. These were best of friends. They were as close as they possibly could be, and their love guided their friendship. Everyone needs a friend who's like family to them. And I have friends like that. Friends that really are like blood to me. Just so you guys know, Heather and I, we put a will together recently, now that we're here in the Nixa area, so we kind of updated everything. And one of the people that I put on my will is my friend Zach Estep, who lives up in Springfield, because he's literally like a brother to me. And he's in closest proximity. The rest of my family's hours away. So Zach Estep is on the will as one of the caretakers of my children if me and Heather were both to die. Why? Because he is like a brother to me. I love that man, and I know that man loves me and my family and will do whatever he can to take care of me and provide for my family and help me. And I would do the same thing for his kids. And if you have a healthy friendship and relationship with people, it can go beyond blood like that, where you can become like family. You need to find friends like that. The fourth quality is this. Look at verse 23, the fourth quality in verse 23. And Saul's servants spake those words in the ears of David. Well, excuse me, let's kind of catch. I'm in the wrong chapter. Here we go. 23. Chapter 20, verse 23. And as touching the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold, the Lord be between thee and me forever. To make sure that they don't just skip over who's really at the center of their relationship, they say right there in verse 23, the Lord be between me and thee forever. A good friend puts God first. A good friend puts God first. And God can only be at the center of a friendship if both friends are godly people. I said that a moment ago, that they have to be men of integrity. You have to be people of integrity. But you also have to both be godly people. And this is very, very important. And this is one that I think we struggle with a little bit. Your dearest and closest friends need to be godly Christians. That doesn't mean that you can't be friends with lost people. We need to be friendly and loving towards all people. And I think we all probably have friends and acquaintances who are lost. But your greatest friends, meaning your greatest influences, need to be godly Christians. Because just the reality of it, adults alike, the people that you're closest to, the people that you surround yourself with the most, they're going to rub off. They're going to influence the way you think, the way you talk, the way you act, the way you operate your life. So even for us as adults, if your best bud is a lost dude who gets drunk every Friday night, who doesn't take care of his family, who is not a godly, righteous man, who has no integrity, that's going to rub off on you. You need to make sure that your greatest friends, you're surrounding yourself with people who are going to influence you to be a better person. So surround yourself with people who put God first. Young people, you're the greatest at risk for this, because I understand that you probably got a lot of friends who aren't believers. I mean, even my kids in their neighborhood, they got a lot of friends, little buddies in their neighborhood they run around with. They're not all Christians. We know that. Some of them go to church. I don't really know to what extent that means for their family. But I want to make sure that my kids' greatest influences are people in this church who love God, who are followers of Christ. So you want to make sure, if you need to reevaluate your friendships a little bit, make sure that your closest friends are godly people who put God first. Last point, the fifth point is this: a good friend is selfless. A good friend is selfless. Look at the last couple of verses, verse 30 and 32. It says, then Saul's anger, verse 30, after all this happened, and for sake of time, I won't read the rest of it, but Jonathan goes back, the plan goes through, Saul gets angry. Look at verse 30. Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said to him, look how he's talking to his own son. Thou son of the perverse and rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion, and to the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die. It's a pretty harsh response from his dad to his own son. But he says, you are helping Jonathan to your own, you're helping David to your own confusion. He says, because as long as he's alive, you can't be the next king. As long as he's alive, your throne is not established. Don't you see what's happening here? You're being a friend with David is to your own hurt. Come on, son, stand up for yourself. We need to get rid of this kid. I'm trying to help you out. That's kind of what he's saying, but in a very mean and hurtful way. Look at verse 32. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said unto him, wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? Verse 33, and Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him. His own son, Jonathan. Saul takes the javelin, casts it at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger, and did eat no meat the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, because his father had done him shame. And it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field, at the time appointed with David, a little lad with him. And they followed the plan. He shot an arrow, and that shooting the arrow really far. He said, run, and go chase after it. But that was kind of code for David to go run. And we see that verse 41, and as soon as the lad was gone, David arose out of a place toward the south and fell on his face to the ground and bowed himself 3 times. And they kissed one another and wept one another until David exceeded. And Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for as much as we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord be between me and thee, and between my seed and thy seed forever. And he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. Jonathan had everything to lose in this friendship. Think about that. Jonathan had everything to lose, but he was willing to put his friend first to advance his friend. You need to find friends who are willing to put you first to help you be better. All of us have friends who are only friends with us because of what we provide for them. Okay, right? Don't name them by name and don't point to people. But we all have friends like that, right? We all have friends who are only friends with us because we enhance their life and they're using us, right? We also need to be the kind of friend and find the kind of friends who try to better people, who aren't just looking for what they can get out of the friendship, but what they can invest in other people. That's what a godly, selfless friend looks like. So we need to find the kind of friends and be the kind of friends who help their friends follow God no matter what. So as we conclude our camp update review service, whatever you want to call it, I want to encourage our teenagers. Several of you made great friendships during the camp week. I'm thankful for that. There's several other teenagers that are here back at Victory that we want to invite into the group and love on and encourage them to follow God. Adults in the room, the same thing goes for us. That's what church is. It's a community of believers gathering together, encouraging one another to follow God no matter what. Putting God first, being loyal to each other. You know, the Bible says that we need to, in honor, prefer one another. The people in this room, our other Christian brothers and sisters, need to be people we put first over other friendships, saying we prefer these friendships because these are godly Christians seeking to follow God just like I am, and I'm going to value them and favor them and love on them, and I'm going to be loyal to them, and I'm going to be trustworthy to them. I'm going to be selfless for them to be able to better other people. That's what a godly friendship looks like. Adults, we need to model that for these kids, and we need to be that for these kids. These kids are coming back with a passion for God, several of them surrendering to ministry, surrendering to God's will for their life. We don't need to put that fire out. We need to be the right kind of influences, friends, if you will, to feed that fire, to feed that flame, and encourage them to keep following God no matter what. At the end of Jonathan and David's close-knit friendship when they would part ways, and really, I don't know that they would ever see each other again. Their parting words were, "The Lord be between me and thee forever." No matter what happens in our friendship, God still comes first. Let's exemplify that and model that as well in our homes, in our church, for our children, in our communities, of what it looks like to be a godly friend, godly influence. Let's close in prayer. We'll be dismissed tonight. Dear Father.